Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Well, we've mentioned it, but we haven't gotten to it. So let's get to a little bit of what Chris Krebs had to say on 60 Minutes last night. He is the former head of the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA.
Yes, I love CISA.
Which, among other things, has election security under its charge. He was fired after the election by President Trump after sort of openly disputing President Trump's claim that fraud had occurred in the election. This is what Krebs had to say sort of as a general statement about the 2020 election.
I have confidence in the security of this election because I know the work that we've done for 4 years in support of our state and local partners. I know the work that the intelligence community has done, that the Department of Defense has done, that the FBI has done, that my team has done. I know that these systems are more secure. I know, based on what we have seen, that any attacks on the election were not successful.
He called the idea that systems were hacked, the claims made mainly by Sidney Powell, most specifically, and brashly.
That there is some hacking of these election vendors and their software and their systems across the country. It's nonsense. Just
nonsense, he said. Krebs also said that the fail-safe with respect to ensuring that the election was secure, paper ballots.
Paper ballots. Paper ballots give you the ability to audit, to go back and check the tape and make sure that you got the count right. And that's really one of the keys to success for a secure 2020 election. 95% of the ballots cast in the 2020 election had a paper record associated with it. Compared to 2016, about 82%.
And with a paper record, you can go back and verify what the machine is saying by physically counting the paper.
That gives you the ability to prove that there was no malicious algorithm or hacked software that adjusted the tally of the vote.
I mean, did he seem believable to you? Because he seemed a little angry because he couldn't say goodbye to his staff. I mean, I don't know if...
Well, he's potentially believable, but what he said does not preclude the possibility of fraud, including fraud that would involve the vendors of the voting systems, the hardware as well as the software. So, for example, hypothetically, I don't know this, but just saying it's possible, the open question as to the vote counting stopping in the wee hours of the Wednesday morning following the Tuesday election, so November 4th morning. Is it possible that they had a real-time handle on what the vote totals were? In big states with big metropolitan areas, sort of what you need to come out of Milwaukee County with, what you need to come out of Philadelphia with in order to win Wisconsin and Pennsylvania,
Detroit
respectively.
For Michigan, yeah.
Same. Generally speaking. So, if you know what you need to come out with and you're not there, then you could have a bunch of phonied up ballots that are processed through the machines, that are recorded by the machines accurately, that are recorded and recounted accurately in a recount like happened in Dane and Milwaukee counties most recently. You say, well, look, the counts match, no fraud, no hacking. Well, it's a combination of high tech and low tech. I'm not saying it happened. I'm saying it's possible. So what Krebs said yesterday, and of course Scott Pelley doing the interview for 60 Minutes is completely.
His glasses off, his pen, his finger on his cheek. He's really concerned.
Well, but there's no follow-up questions. There's no thinking going on there. They're just prompting for the answers they want. This election was secure. Americans should have 100% confidence in it. End of story. Period. That's a wrap. Right. Cut tape. And so. But I mean, there are other scenarios not contemplated by Krebs in which voter fraud could have occurred, and this is why these things are litigated, and this is why you do a recount, and then you're able to actually watch the count and to look at the ballots and to do signature checks, and then you start to record more evidence of irregularities that can then be later introduced as evidence in a complaint to pursue legal remedies. That's what's actually in process. I know 60 Minutes want that to be like the definitive statement on the campaign, that interview, but it's not. Even if you take everything Krebs said as accurate. For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined by, hold on a second, I'm sorry. We're pleased to be joined.
Bye.
Yes. By Allum
Allum,
Bokhari,
sorry.
who's a senior technology correspondent at Breitbart News. He's also the author of, I wanted to make sure I had the book right, Deleted, #Deleted, Big Tech's Battle to Erase the Trump Movement and Steal the Election. Allum, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hi, great to be on.
So why don't we start with what Chris Krebs had to say yesterday in that 60 Minutes interview and what your handle on it was in terms of this idea that, look, you have these cyber election experts and other people saying there's no evidence of, yes, there's perhaps even maybe conceding, yes, there are these statistical anomalies, but there's no evidence of massive fraud, whether of a high-tech or low-tech nature, and so the election was legitimate. The American people should have 100% confidence in it, and it's time to inaugurate Joe Biden.
Well, I mean, Chris would say that, given that it was his job to install election integrity, but he's not in a position to do that. He hasn't investigated all of these suspicious incidents in the election. He doesn't know what went on in every precinct, and he doesn't seem to like Trump very much. He's been another one of these, anti-Trump people who were embedded in the bureaucracy. And just came out at the right moment to challenge the president's view on things. I also want to talk a bit about the mainstream media. It's really fascinating. If you go through the last 4 years of coverage since the 2016 election, you'll find endless stuff about hacked voting machines and potential fraud and potential hacking of the 2016 election. Of course, all of that, including, by the way, about the Smartmatic machines. There was lots of media coverage about that and how vulnerable they are. Of course, that's now abruptly stopped in the wake of the 2020 election night. So, it's not at all surprising to see that change in coverage.
Well, could there have been foreign interference in this 2020 election?
Well, it's impossible to say. I mean, I've never thought much about the whole idea of foreign interference on social media platforms. This is one of the things I talk about in my book. That was sort of the panic whipped up by the mainstream media after 2016. The truth of the matter is, foreign interference on social media platforms in 2016 was, a few Russian memes on Facebook that didn't really influence everyone, and even left-wing academics and researchers who looked into it found, well, this was highly unlikely to influence anyone because it targeted strictly partisans on both sides, so not people who would, have their minds changed easily. I think the real thing that needs to be talked about more is the interference of Silicon Valley companies, because I think that actually had a huge impact. The way, and this is what Deleted, the book, is about, I think that had a huge impact on the kind of information that undecided voters especially saw, and they're the really crucial voters because they're the ones whose mind is not necessarily made up. So if they go onto Google and they search for, say, Joe Biden, all they see is a bunch of propaganda, that's going to have a huge impact on them.
Well, this is exactly what Bob Epstein, the Harvard-trained psychologist, has argued for years now, testifying before Senate subcommittee back in July of 2019, and he was out again last week talking about the research that he did, he and his team, which is pretty substantial, continuing 7 years of research in terms of Google's impact. And this is somebody who was a Hillary Clinton supporter in 2016, Joe Biden supporter in 2020. He's a liberal. He argued, I believe, that Google changed at minimum. He doesn't have the upper register yet, but at minimum, Google moved 6 million votes. And obviously that is millions more votes than decided the election over the spread of a few states. But through manipulating search algorithms, they moved at least 6 million votes, according to Bob Epstein.
That is a highly plausible number, I think, and the reason it's plausible is because of the level of information that all of these companies have on each and every person using their services. They know exactly who the undecided voters are. They know exactly what issues each one is interested in. And, they already provide, these companies already provide tailored content to everyone based on their interests in order to, sell us products, get us to click on ads. So when you imagine them doing the same with regards to politics, you can kind of understand the level of influence they can have and why it goes so far beyond, say, bias in the mainstream media, where we're sort of aware of what's going on, we're sort of aware of the partisan biases of news hosts, but we're not aware of it when it comes to these Silicon Valley algorithms that are all hidden from view.
Yeah, and consistent with that here again, just in terms of media influence, you talk about it, but is there a way to quantify it? Well, Bob Epstein is quantifying Google's manipulations. Also, Brent Bozell's group, the Media Research Center, commissioned a survey of 1,700 people who voted for Biden in 7 swing states, and they found that they gave awareness of 8 different stories. Found that 82% of people who voted for Biden did not know of at least one of the 8 stories, and that 35% of people who voted for Biden, for example, did not know the allegations from Tara Reid, who said that Biden sexually assaulted her. 1 in 3 did not. And then you go on to the jobs numbers from June to October. They didn't have an appreciation for that, and so forth. And if they would have known, had awareness of these stories, if those stories would have been covered, generally speaking, the way they would be covered if they were good news for, say, a Joe Biden, that would have changed enough of those surveyed votes to have swung the election to Trump, even setting aside all of the allegations of fraud and misconduct.
And that's believable to me too, that so few people knew about those stories. We've done multiple news stories at Breitbart News showing how Google actually took clicks and impressions to Breitbart News links. They took them to 0 in midsummer after a major algorithm change on searches for Joe Biden. So up until that search algorithm change, if you search for Joe Biden on Google, you'd get a few Breitbart links, and there was a normal pattern of activity of clicks and impressions to those links. But then the change comes in, and all those clicks and impressions dropped to 0. So we were completely wiped out on searches about Joe Biden, and it remained that way until election night.
Well, then how can you fight back? I mean, Breitbart News as an organization, what can you do?
That's a great question. I think these companies really need to be regulated. They have far too much influence over the course of democratic politics. So they get to pick and choose winners in the news media. And it's not just in America, but in every market where these companies dominate. We're in this crazy situation now where a handful of extremely woke, extremely left-wing companies in Silicon Valley are now influencing politics all around the world. It's no surprise to me seeing a news report earlier today that Boris Johnson in the UK wants to look at the censorship question now because he was concerned by what he saw these companies were doing in the American election.
Well, and you wrote about this too, what Facebook did after, just so we can loop Facebook in here as well, Facebook did after the election. So they drive you through sort of what you see and what you don't see to a decision. They try and drive as many people to a decision. And then they try and drive you to an understanding of the implications of the decision you made. So they drive you to vote for Biden, and then after the election, they suppress Breitbart and promote CNN to essentially discount any suggestions that may be circulating that there was anything untoward about how the election was conducted.
Yes, it's called they call it the News Ecosystem Quality Ranking. And this was fascinating to me to see this. I believe it was the New York Times that reported on the existence of this thing, because this is one of the things that my sources told me about in the book in Deleted. There were a number of interviews with Silicon Valley whistleblowers inside these big companies, and he told me that every single one of these companies has this score that they can use to turn down the volume on certain types of content, to push it further down people's feeds, push it further down search results. And that sounds like, a conspiracy theory that, Silicon Valley has this secret, Chinese-style social credit system where they adjust the rankings of people based on what they like and dislike. But now the New York Times comes out and confirms it. So all of the things that sound like conspiracy theories about what Silicon Valley is doing, they're all turning out to be true.
He is Allum Bokhari, senior technology correspondent at Breitbart, author of Deleted, #Deleted, Big Tech's Battle to Erase the Trump Movement and Steal the Election. Allum, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Good luck with the book.
Thank you. Great to be on.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Liberty Mutual Insurance Company presents and Doug.
Okay, class, let's bump it up to 9.